Sometimes too much cake can be a bad thing. Sometimes too many games can be a bad thing. And that's the question of the day, as Nintendo states they want to release around 20 to 30 indie games on Nintendo Switch per week. What's going on, everybody? It's Zach from Switch Forest. Gabe is here, and we have some interesting quotes from the 78th Annual General Meeting of Shareholders. The good Sir Susumu Tanaka says, some of the indie games already released have gone on to become million sellers worldwide. In the future, we are looking to release around 20 to 30 indie games on Nintendo Switch per week, and we definitely expect to see some great games among them. This is the quote that has really kind of gained a lot of traction, because it seems like an insane number. Now, before we get to our take and how we feel this plays out, I do want to point out that it's not as crazy as it seems, given the fact that they have over 700 games already on the platform. That was stated by Reggie last month, and if you do the math, it equates to 11 games per week over 16 months. Now, obviously, some weeks, especially early on in the Switch's life cycle, were lower, so I would guesstimate that it's more around like 15 on average. So jumping to 20 or 30, I mean, on the lower end isn't that big of an increase. On the higher end, it doubles it.
Yeah. Okay, so it is a troubling statement here, in my opinion, at least, right? Because people already say like, oh, there's a ton of shovelware on Switch, and not everybody like has the clear definition of what shovelware is. This is nothing like the Wii, at least in its current state. But I think it is a problem to have 20 to 30 indie games come out on Switch every single week. We've made videos about the discoverability of games on eShop and how that's a problem, and they don't do things super well to make things that are of quality rise to the top. A game that is just like lesser known but still really, really good is going to get lost in just the sheer number of games released every week, and that's a problem.
Yeah, it's interesting. Kimishima said in the same interview, we are currently working towards reaching 1,500 software titles developed for Nintendo platforms using Unity. I think that will give you an idea of how much it has grown. That's a lot of games there. On one hand, it's like, okay, cool. They have this many people and this many partners that are interested in making games. On the other hand, you're right. It's like flooding a space that, I mean, it straight up cannot support that, right? We've seen that with Steam. We've seen that in other instances. Like, there's no way that 20 to 30 indie games a week can be successful. So first off, you are setting up for majority of these games to not be successful. And that's, I guess, fine, right? It's not like we need to release one a week so that they have their day. The better titles should, in effect, rise. Is Nintendo doing enough? We can touch on that. But first off, like, I think it's kind of part of this strategy to do something different and to be maybe just like strategically, hey, we're not going to get the main third-party multi-platform titles, so what if we do become more of a Steam-type service? What if we do offer tons and tons of options? And there seems to be like a debate, Gabe, of like, is it shovelware, is it not? I want to give Emily Rogers' perspective here as just sort of a notable Switch community person. She says, there have been a lot of hot takes on this, but I have my own hot take. Nintendo has been releasing 20 plus games per week on the Switch eShop since September 2017. Now, again, that's a little high, because even 20 plus in September would be 800, and they're not at that number. So she's a little high on her estimation there. But it's. She says, from a developer perspective, I don't think flooding the eShop with games week after week is necessarily a good thing. But she also says that there's not many shovelware titles. She lists Runbow, Yoku Island Express, Celeste, SteamWorld Dig 2, Hollow Knight, Night in the Woods, Golf Story, Battle Chef Brigade as all really good games. And she's right, but that's not 20 per week. There aren't 20 Celeste per week, Gabe. There aren't 20 Hollow Knights per week. So there is kind of this like skewing of like, yeah, there really are a lot of great games on Switch. There's really a lot of great games on every platform. But it's not like, 80% of the games released are these like tentpole titles.
Well, a couple of things, right? Like, the issue with the whole Steam thing is they are like a much more open platform. Nintendo still does some curation, right, before these things reach the eShop. And as you mentioned, not all of these games are of quality. We have a lot of mobile ports that are being sold for an exorbitant amount of money when they are free on your phone. That is happening more and more often at least. Right? And so many of these are just like ports, right? And that's good. Like when Inside and Limbo come, that's a really cool thing. Pocket Rumble, we were super excited for, and that's out. So if it's games of that caliber, sure. If you have 20 of those every single week, cool. But then you start getting to where the mobile ports are, and again, like, that's, in my eyes, it's totally unfair to charge $10, $15 for these mobile ports on Switch when they're free on your phone. I understand why, I get it, but yeah, she goes and mentions all these amazing games, but let's also not forget that there is some, I don't even know how to put it. There are some games that are of noticeably less quality, right?
And there are some that aren't SteamWorld Dig 2, that aren't Celeste, that are good and don't get the push that they deserve. And that is partially because of the just sheer amount. And if Nintendo is looking to increase that, and in some ways maybe even double that, maybe next time around, maybe Yoku Island Express and Battle Chef Brigade don't even hit Emily Rogers' list because she didn't see them, or she didn't find them, or they didn't gain the traction on that top sellers list. So I think if this is going to be a thing, Nintendo has to invest energy and time and money into curation, into a better system, into a way to separate, highlight, delineate something to figure out if we're going to put out 30 indie games per week. And this is not even including Nintendo's first party and retail releases that in theory get the main marketing push. How are we going to help, one, the indie games succeed that deserve to succeed, and two, the consumers find what they want to find, instead of it just being a glut of like, here are a ton of just a bunch of games. I guess for you, Gabe, as an individual and as a person that wants the Switch to succeed on both fronts, would you rather have just this sort of open floor where any and everything can be released and you are getting 30 games a week?
No, I see no need for that, really. And again, when so many of them are not of quality, like, I think you're hurting the platform by doing that. You're confusing people. You are hurting the smaller indies that actually have like legitimately like awesome games, because their game might not stand out. What if like a game that's like worse has a better like thumbnail? Like, I mean, because what do you go off of really when you're buying these things that are so obscure and oftentimes cost like so like little money that they're like totally like impulse buys for people? Unless somebody knows about your game specifically, it's really hard to climb the best sellers list. Currently Hollow Knight is number 2 on top of the best sellers list, and I specifically mentioned Hollow Knight because it is a recently released indie, and it's doing really, really well. But that game had traction, and it is a notable game from other platforms that we already know is of the utmost quality. If I look at the top 10, right, there are 2 indie games. It's Hollow Knight and Stardew Valley currently, right now, as at the time of this recording. Actually, Overcooked Special Edition is number 10, so 3. But again, all of those are mainstays in indie games that everybody knows about. How does, X, the new game, called Water Bottle or something that's amazing? How do people find out that's amazing if it's only on Switch and they haven't played it somewhere else?
Well, and I think one of the other issues becomes there are so many developers, and rightfully so, that are just trying to push their already existing titles onto Switch. It's very hard, forget quality, it's very hard to even know what is new. It's very hard to know where this is even coming from. And some people could say, okay, that's not a problem. It's about the game. It doesn't matter what year it's from, where it originated. But to me, as someone that is specifically going to, find these games and specifically looking to make videos about these games, it's even tricky for us sometimes to figure out where it originated without doing, research or looking into, okay, who developed this? Oh, it actually came out 4 years ago on PlayStation 4. Or, oh, it came out on PlayStation 3. Like, it's... I think that becomes a thing of like, oh my gosh, now we have a chance to put our title on this handheld platform that's very successful, that is, doing far better than something like the Vita, which used to be a decent hub for indie titles. And that to me is maybe a little bit of a Switch specific thing of like everyone wants to put their old game, their new game, their in-between game on Switch. I know it would be like a death knell to say like, hey, let's separate new stuff from re-releases, but man, even categorization like that would help me supremely to know, like you said, okay, we get 20 games. Well, okay, 10 of them are from 2012 to 2015, and 5 of them are from, unknown developers or mobile ports or whatever, and 5 of them are, I mean, how do you highlight this? Does Nintendo put out a show and say, like, these are the top games? I mean, you mentioned Hollow Knight. Part of the reason that that game, besides being great, I mean, Nintendo directly said, like, go download this. Did they have, did they do the curation on their end from, like, almost like a YouTube social media perspective and say, like, hey, here are the ones we're highlighting? How does it work with Steam? I look at Steam often, and you go and you see the dozens of releases, and a lot of times it does boil down to what's an attractive thumbnail, what's an attractive description. Does it even look like it was, made with quality? And there are games that are really cheap Astro Bears parties when we always go back to that. At first blush, you'd be like, what the heck? This is not worth my time. And it ends up being great fun. So sometimes it's not even something you can predetermine. Don't judge a game by its icon, I guess. They just have to find a way. If this is going to be their plan, if they are going to model the eShop after Steam in this way and say, hey, we want to do something different. We want to be an open platform. We want to provide quantity and quality. Like, somebody's got to step in and do something. Steam has tried, their user review system and, their curators in the community that sort of help make the list. And I don't know, man. I think it's just going to become, again, fast forward to July 10th, 2019. Now there's 2,000 games on Switch. Like, is it a case where Hollow Knight and Celeste and Stardew Valley are still the ones? Like, I just don't know how that goes.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I was going to touch on, right? Because Steam has their user reviews that people look to quite often. If Nintendo can somehow improve that and have the community themselves kind of police how these things go, and, hey, this is like actually like a really cool game, and enough people like are really enjoying it, and I don't know, they figure out a system for user reviews, I think that could really help, as well as, the curation that they do on Steam. Steam, that's the only way they can do that, because so many things are available on that platform just 'cause it's so open. But yeah, Nintendo has a task ahead of them if this is what they want to do.
And there is sort of the open market philosophy of like, hey, let the consumers and the players decide what's successful, of what they want. I personally, if I had to put my stamp on it, I would rather Nintendo pick 5 great games or good games a week and release those and have a little bit more intense of a process. But I think by having an open system, by encouraging and inviting all comers and all developers, that allows them to get just about anything and everything from the indie scene and to create a platform where they have near constant releases. And I do wonder if this script would be flipped were they able, or if they are ever able, to acquire the Maddens, the Call of Duties, the Assassin's Creeds, the Battlefields, and the Battlefronts of the world. If there is a day or a time when the Switch ups its power or somehow ups its presence amongst third parties, I wonder if this we'd see a change in strategy. Let us know your take in the comments down below. How do you feel about 20 to 30 games per week? You got any ideas on how Nintendo could best curate this or best separate? How do you sift through the now sea of indie titles and find the ones that are great? I mean, when we're going through our monthly list, it's like, it's hard. It's really tough. And I'm curious how they're going to handle this, if at all. But let us know your take in the comments down below, everybody. Make sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all the latest and greatest from the Switch and its slew of releases. We've got you covered. Follow us on Twitter and Discord. Links in the description below. And until next time, for myself and Gabe, thanks again. Have a great day. Switch Force out.